glad you're joining us again today. Today we are very pleased to have with us the author of this book, The Bond, by Lynn Taggart, who is an award-winning journalist and best-selling author of books that have really taken the world by storm, The Field and The Intention Experiment, to name actually just a few. Her career really goes back far before that with other related work. And Lynn has really been a driving force, a pioneer in helping us reshape our thinking about what is possible and who we are. And that's a lot of what this book is about, to redefine who we as human beings are, and largely from a scientific point of view. So it's really an honor and a pleasure to have Lynn on today on A Better World to talk about really some of our favorite subjects, how to humanize the world and make it a better place for all, and to have a profound basis, not only in our inner understanding and natural intuition, but even having that bared out by today's latest science. So, hey Lynn, how are you?
Hey, nice to see you, Mitchell.
So glad to have you.
Great.
So, again, I mean, since I've seen you last and we've had you on the show, you've like taken another major leap forward in gathering information and science that really, I gotta tell you, Lynn, I love the first couple of books. This takes us, in a sense, to another place of creating, I feel, a bond between us, a sense of community, and it can be really instrumental in helping people take that leap that they know is sort of there for them to take, to create a world that really works for all, based not just on competition, fun competition, i.e. Olympic competition, but on cooperation.
Yes.
There can be, I think, cooperation inside, if you will, of competition.
Right, exactly. Well,
could you talk about some of the basic points that you make in this book so we can share that with the audience?
Sure. Well, I wanted to ask the basic question, were we meant to be so competitive? Because competition is the engine that drives our lives. We have a very competitive educational system and model. We create competition as the driving force of our business model. Competition occurs in relationships and even in our neighborhoods. We get jealous and furious if we find a neighbor drives a Mercedes when we drive a Volvo. So competition just is the mantra of our lives. Both are good. But so I wanted to ask this fundamental question: is this the scientific story we're supposed to live by? Is this real? Is this true? Yeah. And so it takes us back to where our story comes from. The narrative of our lives is written by many things: philosophy, religion, etc., but particularly these days by science. And the scientific story.
Right, well, science is sort of our current religion, if you will.
Yes, exactly, Mitchell. And, the scientific story as we know it is about individual things, first of all, and individualism as a principle.
Yes.
And that really came about through the ideas of Isaac Newton, who described a world of separate and well-behaved things. And then Charles Darwin.
Well-behaved.
Well-behaved.
To some extent, well-behaved.
I do. Well, they followed very fixed laws in time and space, and that's why he considered the universe, essentially a machine, and
that's
essentially, equivalent to a lot of different equations.
Yeah.
So then Charles Darwin comes along, and he defines our evolution, our coming into being, as a struggle and as a competition.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest.
Which isn't even a point you made the other evening.
Exactly. He never actually coined that term. He thought of struggle as much more metaphoric struggle, but nevertheless, he saw it as the fittest survives, at least earlier on in his career. And so that became, the new mantra, the idea that, that life is a race to the finish line, and there ain't enough out there, so you better darn well get there
It's a mentality of scarcity, exactly.
Yes, and that is
it's a poverty mentality kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, not enough, and the fittest, only the fastest runners survive. So that's been essentially the mantra that we live by. So I went back to all of the new frontier science and said, is this the right story? And the resounding answer is no. The story that's emerging through quantum physics and biology and psychology and anthropology and sociology and all the ologies is that we were actually made to be cooperative. Nature has designed us for wholeness. Nature has designed us with a bond, something beyond wholeness, which is a connection so intrinsic, so essential, that it's impossible to say where one thing ends and another thing begins. So this bond
Literally seamless.
literally seamless in every area of our lives. So let's start with the quantum particle, because that's really the smallest thing in the universe.
Right.
And scientists have been looking for those things to try to define the big stuff by looking for the essential unit of the world. And when you get down to smaller and smaller levels of quantum information and quantum particles, you find that you don't have a thing at all. You have a relationship. Quantum particles trade information back and forth like an endless juggling act. And
It's really quantum information.
exactly. It's quantum information and
yeah.
energy that's being passed back and forth
Yeah.
and constantly changing. So we can never say with any finality that this is a one individual particle and this is another one.
Sounds like Zen to me, Lynn.
Well, it is. I mean, the science,
Of
Mitchell,
course it is.
is
Yeah.
just catching up to what spiritual masters espoused many thousands of years ago.
Exactly.
So we're just finally catching up to the fact that they were onto something.
That's right.
And the onto something
They
is
were
that
onto reality is what they were
Right,
onto.
right.
And we've been running a funny course,
Yes.
trying to, someone trying to chase their own tail, basically.
Absolutely. And we've been running according to the scientific story, which has moved us against nature, against our real nature.
Exactly.
Because nature has designed us not to compete, but to share, care, and be fair. And when we go along with that, we thrive. If you look at the history, and when we don't, we get into a mess, as we are in
Exactly.
right now.
Think of just the herding instinct, so to speak, of animals. Just look at animal behavior. We see it all over the place. They have to bond together and
Yes.
be together, families as well as larger groupings, in
Yes.
order to live and feed and bathe. And another thing that you make reference to that I studied umpteen years ago studying anthropology is that we were also designed to play.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes, yes,
It's
absolutely.
part of animal nature and human nature.
It's one of the essential primitive emotions, play.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, we were designed. I mean, nature has all kinds of buttons they've created in our brains. I mean, for instance, we were designed to be altruistic. We feel as good about giving as we do about eating or having sex.
Yes.
It's that fundamental.
Yes.
We were designed to do that. That's a sign of health. You know, the evolutionary biologists talk about how we were born to be selfish, and even our genes are selfish, but that's completely incorrect. The new science coming out is demonstrating that even babies, before they've been socialized, want to help. They want to give. You know, it's
Isn't
part of our
that interesting?
It's part of our hard wiring.
Yes, indeed.
But you see,
It's
the
such an
problem.
important point that it's our hardwire. It's really by design.
It's by
You know,
design.
neurologically as well as hormonally.
Absolutely. We've been designed, nature's designed us to come together,
Yes.
to belong together, to,
Yes.
to
To
share,
agree.
to
I love that
agree.
point that you make in the book, you know.
Well, if somebody were filming us, they would probably see that you're probably blinking in time to my voice when you're listening to me, because we have a...
Nodding from time to time.
Yeah, exactly, all in syncopation, because we have a kind of need constantly to come together. That also manifests in how contagious emotion is. They find that,
Exactly.
for instance, happiness spreads down a social network, so that if I'm happy, I'm more likely to have happy friends, not because I self-select them, but because of the natural spread of happiness. And that occurs with everything, loneliness, obesity, we're
Totally.
all copycats.
Totally. Do you remember that email that went out? I know we sent it out from A Better World, which said, major infection spreading across planet. And then you opened up the email and said, people are starting to love each other. Love your neighbor. And it was
Wonderful.
just such a relief to feel that would be the infection of the new age,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
But it's
I
that
will
same
know
phenomenon.
That it should be.
Yeah.
Right now, greed is is the infection of the age.
Yes.
And the problem
Well, we're
is...
trying to make that a chapter that we're closing.
Yes, well, we're hoping to close that, but at the moment, we're in a lot of crises.
Indeed.
You know, we're in financial crises, ecological crises, terrorist crises, all kinds of crises, and we can't define it, but this is what is the end stage of this mindset.
Yes.
This is what
This is
essentially...
what it looks like.
This is what it looks like. This
Yeah.
is what selfish looks like, and it looks like everything collapsing.
Exactly.
Our society collapsing, you know, our children not having so much future, our educational model collapsing, the parks in California closing. You know, this is what selfish looks
Libraries in New York. I just sent out an email to a lot of people about that.
Yes.
On Facebook. You know, they're
Yes.
trying to close our libraries. I mean, the fount of learning, etc. You know.
I know. So this is what this mindset takes us to.
Yes.
And it's absolutely against our nature. Our nature, as I say, our nature wills us to be fair, too. We have an "it's not fair" button in our brains, Mitchell,
Very
that
true.
flashes when we take more than our fair share or we don't get enough of our fair share. And that's exactly what's happening to us now, because
Yes.
we're all looking at the banking crisis that was engineered by the very same people who are getting record bonuses for it, while so many millions of people are now
Out of
out
work.
of work.
Or foreclosed upon. They don't even
Or
have a place
foreclosed,
to live.
or they're
so
living
many.
in a they're living in
Yeah.
a tent or something. And that, you know, what's screaming out from all of us is it's not fair, you know.
Exactly.
So
We
that's,
cry for justice.
Yes.
We wish for what's just.
yes, and it's
It's
part of our-
archetypal, actually. And you know, you can, in looking at the work you've done, what I kind of see is where the archetypes originate psychobiologically.
Yes,
Do you know?
yes,
These
yes.
are not just whims of fancy of Carl Jung or the ancients, for that matter. This is a true biological destiny, if you will, for
Yes.
us all to play through certain archetypes.
Absolutely. Well, and, you know, it's all just part of our nature, but the problem is, too, when things are unfair, this is why it's such an important point now. When things are unfair, as they are now, when we've got 1 in 39 people in America is a millionaire, but 39 million people live below the poverty line.
Right.
In that kind of circumstance, everybody loses. Epidemiologists have done studies showing that when situations are like this, all the social factors crumble. So at the moment, with our unfairness, when compared to all Western countries, we've got the worst track record for education, for health, for mental health, and for
Crime.
Crime, exactly. When things are unfair, everybody suffers, rich and poor,
Exactly.
because the bond is broken.
It's the wonderful Brit Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett, who, you know,
Yes, the
as
spirit
we know,
level, this
we've had them on the
fantastic
show.
work.
Yeah, fabulous.
Well, they
Inequality
demonstrate-
creates all of the hardships, all the social indicators that we're currently experiencing. And where there's the larger middle class, you're saying, Lynn, as they did, that's where you have the greatest sense of justice, fairness, greatest health, least violence, least criminality.
Exactly. So
And
just
Japan
to make
and Norway won, by the way.
absolutely, absolutely. And so we're not talking about socialism. Japanese culture is not socialist. What we're talking about is a caring and fair society.
That's right.
You know, and for that, to that end, Mitchell, I'm starting a fairness campaign because
Beautiful.
I think, you know, America needs it, and
Oh,
we all
yeah.
need it in the West, but America needs it most. And I'm creating a fairness pledge, a fairness principles, so that people will start
Excellent.
understanding that, you know, fairness and integrity have to come back, or our society, very fabric of our society is
Yes,
going to fall
is
apart.
lost.
Yeah.
There's no integrity. I think it's fabulous, Lynn, and I will help you out in some way.
Well, wonderful.
I really will. Truly,
Wonderful.
I think it's a lot of what we do at A Better World is very much designed toward creating the sense of fairness and equality.
Absolutely.
You know, we just play that game. You know?
Absolutely. The point of the bond, too, is that all is not lost. I mean, I really wrote the book not
Right.
only to write a new scientific story, because I think that's really necessary, but also to provide a signpost, a blueprint for how we come back to our real selves. And there are basically 4 things that the book really goes into in detail, which is, you know, we have to look more holistically. You know, we're trained on individuality so much that that's how we see.
Rugged
too.
individuality is the basis and caricature of America.
Absolutely. And we're starting to realize that that's very toxic, that's very one-sided, that
In
creates
itself, in
it
itself.
creates polarization. Yes, we're not talking about
It's fun for
individual
movies,
achievement.
and
Yes.
it's fun for leadership,
Yes.
symbolism. But
Exactly,
then get
Mitchell.
off it and move along.
Exactly. And it's, we're not talking about lack of individual achievement, that we can't have individual expression. But what we're talking about is that kind of what's in it for me mentality exclusively creates a situation where we've forgotten how to see. We
Yes.
can't see anything but what's in it for me now. So there's a lot of exercises and information in the book, or suggestions and signposting about how to recover an ability to see much more holistically. Because, other cultures, not all cultures see and think the same way. Eastern cultures.
In fact, right, Eastern culture is much more of a, by definition, a group mentality, the Chinese and then the Japanese.
Yes.
They think of what's of value to the group
Exactly.
first,
Exactly.
or the family. And even there are examples even of that in Western culture and European culture.
Yes.
Think of the family.
Yes.
Even the mafia, if you think about it, at base
Yes.
had a certain altruistic, despite what may have happened.
Yes.
It's about
Yes.
the family,
Absolutely.
There's something quite beautiful about it, as long as it's not at the exclusion of the larger human family.
No, you're
You know.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And it's, the Japanese,
I think I see
native
you
cultures.
non-verbally agreeing with me.
Exactly. You're starting to notice more, Mitchell. But that, native cultures also see much larger.
Yes, indeed.
So
7 generations down, no less.
they are taught
Yeah.
to see the relationships, the space in between things. The other areas that are really important are learning how to relate to people differently, because again, we relate to people in what's in it for me. And we've been
Yes.
taught about being individual, being first, so much that we look at relationships very much as Martin Buber described, the I-it thing
Yes.
of looking at people as objects for individual exploitation. And so many people working in this area look at the whole idea of Bohemian dialogue and other ways of relating the way Africans
Could you
relate.
explain that?
Sure. With a Bohemian dialogue, David Bohm believed that that we're just operating on artificial constructs. These constructs are our beliefs. And we argue with people based on this artificial stuff that's just created via our culture. And he believed that there was a deeper mind and a deeper connection. I mean, he was describing the bond, basically.
Definitely.
The connection that's always there, no matter how disagreeable the other person, no matter how much you disagree with the person, there's that bond, that connection. And so he created a kind of rules of dialogue where the purpose of speaking with each other, relating to each other, is not to win anything, not to win a debate, not to win an argument. And he talks about listening fully with heart and mind, not judging,
listening.
deep listening, not judging, monitoring your own reactions to another person, and